All right, we're going to get started right on time because we're going to get through a lot of cool stuff today, guys. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Kevin Jones. I'm a developer relations engineer working for Edge and Node, working on the graph. And I'm also an advocate for Scaffold ETH, part of the Buidl Guild, or the Buidl Guidl, as you might have heard. Today I'm going to be talking about Scaffold ETH, though. It's basically this kind of awesome toolkit that kind of gets you up and started quickly for building dApps. So it's really, really useful for hackathons. Because it is just a really good starting point. This is all my contact info. Feel free to connect with me on whatever you prefer. I'm on Twitter, Telegram. I'll be here around too as well. I'll be at the graph booth. So if you guys have questions about the graph or about Scaffold ETH after this, I'd be happy to help you guys out. So please connect with me. I don't have any slides. We're going to pretty much do like real-time demo here. But first I kind of want to talk about Scaffold ETH. There's two versions of Scaffold ETH. I'm going to be mainly focusing today on Scaffold ETH 2, which is the newest flavor of Scaffold ETH. There was a lot of cool improvements that have been made to the project. And more specifically, it comes with Next.js. It's kind of revolves around TypeScript. It also uses Rainbow Kit and WagMe, and it also uses Hardhat. We're in the process of making a cool build that actually might support Foundry as well. But for everyone here, this is kind of what you get with it. It's a GitHub repository, so if you just search Scaffold ETH 2, it's going to show up as the first kind of thing. You can come in here, you can template this and kind of copy it over to your own GitHub. That's usually what I recommend. And then you can kind of use that as kind of like your project for the hackathon. So we're just going to kind of get started. So I'm using tmux, which is just like a terminal multiplexer. It kind of always has the ability to have like multiple windows in one kind of console. But you could just use multiple windows. You kind of always need 3 windows with Scaffold ETH because you have your backend, which is running Hardhat, then you have your front end, which is running Next.js, React, and then you have this kind of like third window where you're doing your deploys and kind of pushing your changes, right? So I've gone ahead and just checked out the repository already ahead of time, and I've also gone ahead and did a yarn install. So you do yarn install, it's going to basically install all of the dependencies for you and get you up and running. Once you're ready to go, you just do yarn chain. So yarn chain is going to spin up, again, a copy of Hardhat. It's going to give you these kind of like Hardhat accounts that are available for you to toy around with and start messing around with the EVM and start testing your smart contract. And then in the second window, we're going to run our front end. So yarn start, okay? So yarn start's going to do exactly that. It's going to start up Next.js on localhost 3000. We'll open that up in a second, real fast. Huge improvement over Scaffold ETH 1, which used just straight React. Next.js is just really, really fast and awesome. And then same thing in this third window we're going to use for like all of our deployments, okay? So we're going to do a yarn deploy. Now what that's going to do is actually, Scaffold ETH comes with a smart contract. So we can see that our contract got deployed. We did a transaction. We created our contract. And it tells us how much gas we use because we're console logging that stuff into Hardhat, which is really cool. And we also see that Scaffold or Hardhat mined that block, right? And then we see like, yeah, we can optimize our contract based on gas because we know that's there. We see our contract address. Let's take a look first of all. I'll bring up VS Code. We'll get to that in a second. But let's go ahead and load up the application. So we're going to use, let's see, where's it at? Scaffold ETH, here we go. So Scaffold ETH is, like I said, it's Next.js. So this is kind of what you get when you launch Scaffold ETH. And one of the things you'll notice is that we got this kind of wallet that's automatically integrated. So Scaffold ETH has this concept of burner wallets. So you don't necessarily have to use MetaMask. You can just use the burner wallet. It's ready to go. And we have this kind of identity that we can start testing with. So I can grab some funds from the faucet by just clicking that. That sends some funds from Hardhat into my burner wallet, and I'm ready to start interacting with my contract. So where's my contract? Well, it injects it automatically here into debug contracts. So it basically takes the ABI for the smart contract, which is kind of like the interface, right? That tells your smart contract and your front end how to talk to each other. And it creates and populates all these fields for you. So you can start doing testing against your kind of functions, and you instantly get an output on your variables, right? So you see like, all right, cool. We have a greeting variable, looks like a string. We have an owner variable, which is an address. We have a Boolean that's set to false. And then we have like a counter. And then we have these like reads functions as well. We also see our contract address here. We see if it has any funds. We see what network we're on. And we can come in here and say like, all right, well, let's change the greeting. So we have this like write contract. So we can tell right now there's a set greeting function in our smart contract. and I can change it to whatever. So foobar and hit send. And now I've updated the state of the contract. So we have this kind of like, it's like a hello world contract, really basic. Let's take a look at what it looks like. So let's go ahead and load up the directory for Scaffold ETH. Mainly, the beauty of Scaffold ETH is everything revolves around Yarn. So there's like a package JSON file that has these kind of commands for you to just navigate and do stuff in Scaffold ETH. But more importantly, there's the two packages. It's a monorepo. So you have a Hardhat repo and you have a Next.js repo. So we can go right into Hardhat and we can go into our contracts and go into the your contract, and then we can see our contract. So this is kind of like I said, the hello world contract, and we can kind of start like hacking away at our contract. So I just kind of want to show you guys how this works. So we see here that we have like this owner variable. Let's go ahead and like dump that. I always like to kind of gut the contract. Let's also get rid of the constructor because we're going to make like an empty constructor. And we're also going to get rid of this modifier. And let's just say you made all these changes, right? We're also going to get rid of this withdraw function. And we're going to save that. And then we could try to do a deploy now. Now, if we wanted to, we could do a yarn deploy. If it just sense changes in the contract, it would give you a new contract. But we're getting an error. And the reason why I want to highlight this is we had this constructor and we were passing some arguments in it. And because Scaffold ETH uses Hardhat, we also need to fix the deploy script. So if you take out this constructor, which I did, I kind of ripped out the contents of it, made it empty. We also got to go into the deploy script and look at the actual deployment. So if you're not familiar with Hardhat, it's a JavaScript. Basically, it uses ethers to deploy our contract. And we'll see here that there's a we're getting a copy of our contract, or we're actually deploying our contract here, which is called your contract, and we're using some arguments that we're passing into the constructor. So it's basically complaining about that. So I'm just going to wipe that out because we were using the deployer count to set a variable in the constructor. So I'm just going to save that and kind of redeploy again. So if you ever want to like force, now it was successful. If you ever want to like force your contract to deploy as well, like if you do a yarn deploy again, it's going to see that, well, you don't need to actually redeploy the contract because it's the same, but you can also force a contract by doing yarn deploy -- reset, and it will basically force a new contract to be deployed. Okay, so let's take a look now. So now our UI is automatically changed, right? We've gotten rid of this owner variable. We've gotten rid of, the withdraw function. And now we're kind of in this new state where we can start kind of like building out whatever we want, right? So we could see what that might kind of look like. So let's close the deployer script because we're not going to mean to really mess with that at all. But we could actually, instead of using, earlier we had this like modifier and we had this concept of like access control. And that's one of the things you learn when you're building on Ethereum. You need to have some kind of access control for certain functions. Well, you can just actually import the existing ownable smart contract, which is an Open Zeppelin contract, just by importing it like this. And then we can take our contract and then inherit that, right? So we import ownable, which is just this Open Zeppelin contract. If you're not familiar with Open Zeppelin, it's kind of like a collection of contracts that are, for different use cases, and they're kind of like vetted and widely adopted. And then we can just import that and use it here, or inherit that as here, and then save that. So when we make those couple changes, again, we're going to do our change and then deploy a change and see if it goes through, which it was successful. And then you're kind of in this feedback loop with Scaffold ETH. You're editing your front end, right, with your editor. You're deploying your changes using Hardhat and using the yarn command. And then you're coming in here to the UI and reflecting and seeing your changes. And so you can start to do interesting things, like maybe we want to see, now that we have access to the ownable, we also have this transfer ownership function. So we might be able to call that in our deploy script. Like, let's say if we want to transfer ownership to another address, or we want to renounce ownership of the contract, we can call the renounce ownership, which allows you to throw away the contract. So you can kind of use composable contracts that are already available from Open Zeppelin to kind of start your project. So if you're going to use ERC20 token or create an ERC20 token, then you can get the Open Zeppelin one. Or if you're going to do a NFT, you can get 721 or 1155s and just import those, and they'll just show up here in Scaffold ETH. And then we have this example UI, which is pretty cool. It's just gives you like some examples. Like, one thing I always hear from developers is like, all right, I'm really good at like writing smart contracts, but I don't know the front end components. So we're going to dive a little bit into that and show you kind of what that looks like. But there's a lot of components that are already written for you that make it easy to build your dApp. And this is just a really good example of like, all right, well, we have this kind of window. We have this like greeting option. We can actually say hello world here like this and hit send. And it will like update that by sending some transaction. And then what we'll notice here is our counter increased, right? We get our new state kind of coming over there. And then if we go back to debug contracts, we can see that now we've been able to actually send some ETH into the contract, because this example UI, not only does it allow us to change the state, but it also has a value that it attaches to it, right? So we're actually sending in some value, we're paying for the gas, and we're kind of creating this, interesting function. It's not that interesting, but it's cool just to kind of see how it works. And so let's dive a little bit more into the code of Scaffold ETH's front end. So again, if you're editing your contract, it's in your hard hat contracts, your contract. You can kind of come in here and do whatever you want. If you're new to like building on Solidity, what I always tell people to do is go to Solidity by Example. Solidity by Example is just a really cool place to get examples. So like an example would be like, when you want to get like a mapping, right? You can come in here, grab the mapping, paste it into your smart contract right here, right? Oh, copyright. Tab, boom, save it, deploy. And then we'll see that we got a new copy of our contract. And then we'll see that we have this new mapping available in our front end, right? Here it is, it's my map. And then we can like check this balance or something like that, like grab this and see if there's some kind of map to a value. There's none. But maybe you do that in the constructor, right? Maybe at the time you deploy something, you set a value. So you can start doing interesting things just by grabbing examples from Solidity by Example and kind of pasting those in your contract. Okay, so Solidity by Example is great. Let's go a little bit more into the UI. So like I said, the magic to Scaffold ETH is it builds that debug contract tab for you, which allows you to kind of get up and running, start doing some testing. You can also do something like this where you say like, all right, new incognito window, go to localhost 3000, and then you get this like new identity. So you not only do you have, this kind of like burner wallet here, but you also get access to burner wallet here, and you can start kind of testing different personas that are using your dApp. And so that's really useful because the burner wallet is actually stored inside of the browser session. So if I was to come here and close this again, and then also open up another incognito window, we would get this kind of new identity, right? And a new burner wallet, right? So you can really kind of toy around with like access control or whatever kind of functions that you want with another identity. Okay. So let's look at the front end. So Next.js is, awesome. It's a little bit, if you're just good with Solidity, and it can be kind of a little bit challenging when you start writing, your front end. But the cool thing is under Pages, we have this kind of example UI, which references the components example UI. And then we have this contract data, which allows us to get all of the contract data from our smart contracts. And there's kind of some examples in there. And then also like a contract interaction as well, which shows you how to do like use Scaffold ETH write, which is like a hook that you can use. And so you can come in here and kind of like use this. You can see like with Scaffold ETH, we have these hooks. So we have like one for like using the contract, reading the contract, subscribing to events, or seeing the event history. So there's just all this kind of interesting stuff. And then again, we use WAGMI. So like, let's kind of start hacking away at like a front end so you can kind of see what we would do. So what I always tell people is like, if you're building an app, use the index.ts file, which is this kind of like home thing. It's originally just set up to kind of show you like where you should go to do stuff. Also real quick, there's a block explorer, which is really interesting. It's new, but it also shows you like all your transaction history, which is really cool. You can see like, what you called, what function it was called. It's just kind of interesting to see like the history of that. But yeah, so if you want to edit this thing, this is index.ts, right? So we can come in here and we can like just kind of wipe out some of this stuff. So let's get rid of this and save that. So if we save it, boom, right? We get this kind of like clean slate. So you can kind of think of it like you're building your dApp inside of this home folder, and it's going to be available inside the middle section, but you still get access to all the, everything that's wrapped around Scaffold ETH. Okay. So, let's just say that we want to do something like this. We could say like, I don't know, we'll do const, and then we say like, all right, address We want to get the address of the smart contract from WAGMI, so we can use, use account, right? And my IDE basically automatically imported WAGMI for me here. So I'd have that enabled. So we can see that we have use account access, and then we're able to access that. And so one example would be like, let's use one of the components that comes with Scaffold ETH called address. So we can say address, we say address equals address like this, and then close it off and save that. And what did I do? Address equal. Oh, I need to import that. Yeah. So let's see. We can go from components, example UI. I think it's under use retype class. Say that again. Oh yeah, maybe it'll pop up. Yeah. On where? Yeah, retype the last letter of that word. Or has. Oh, here. There we go. Thank you. I'm still learning like VS Code. I mean, I'm like a terminal kind of guy, so I'm using Vim, you know, so this is all new for me. Okay, so that's just an example. So here we can see we got access to the count, which is like just a component, right? And so we can get that. We can also do something like grab the balance. So we can say like, all right, well, const, let's grab the balance. And by the way, I'm not a front end guy either. I'm still like pretty much green. So we can say use account balance, right? It's going to also import that for us. And then we can also create another one. So let's be slow here and see if it actually takes it. There we go, did. And the same thing, we can pass the address in here. And sorry. Boom. Still learning this AI stuff too. Like I got this auto completion. Did I spell that wrong? Oh, didn't close it off. But you get the idea. So there's some components that are available. So now we have the address here, and then we can also get access to the balance, right? So there's all these interesting like components in there. I'm not going to get too far into it because you know it takes a while to build out a full UI. But I would say go into the examples here into the contract data, contract interactions, and then you can start kind of doing some stuff. But I also want to showcase one other thing. So as you guys know, I also work for Edge and Node, working on the graph. And so I wrote this blog post, which is also quite interesting because there is a bounty available for the graph. And so if you want to use Scaffold ETH and you also are interested in using the graph is kind of like this API layer. I wrote a good blog post that walks you through how to set up Scaffold ETH. And there's a special package of Scaffold ETH, or I should say a special branch called subgraph package for Scaffold ETH 2. And inside of here, there's a complete Dockerized version of the graph that you can set up. And so my blog post actually walks through like basically all the stuff with Scaffold ETH that I went through, at least the basics of like deploying your contract, making some changes. But it also goes into like how you actually spin up the graph and how you create a subgraph using the command line stuff. There's also these yarn commands written for you. So it make it really easy that you can generate a subgraph based on your smart contract. So if you write your smart contract, all you got to do is just run these yarn commands and it will generate all the subgraph information for you. And then you can publish that to Docker. So the one caveat to this solution is it runs in Docker. So if you want to use Scaffold ETH and you want to run it locally, this is a really cool way to do that. And then you don't have to deal with the internet connection if there's any issues. But you can also take your subgraph at some point. Oh, that's what I want to show you guys next. So let's say that you want to deploy this to a testnet, right? Everything we've been doing kind of is local. The next thing you might want to do, and which time do I have? I got 10 minutes. The next thing you might want to do is actually do a yarn generate and actually generate a deployer account. So you don't want to use hard hat accounts to deploy your smart contract because everyone has the private key, right? So you need to generate a new private key. So we store that in an environment file locally, and then you can just do a yarn account and you can fund this account. So you get access to the address and you can just fund it. Like you could just go on your phone. Like if I pulled this up right now, I could send some testnet ETH there. And then you can do a yarn deploy like this, net-network and Sapolia or Goerli or whatever testnet you want, right? So that's really useful because you can use Hardhat as that catalyst just to push your contract to a testnet. And then you could use, if you stop by the graph booth, there's a sheet that walks you through how to deploy a subgraph using the CLI, and you can deploy it to a testnet as well. So there's this kind of like seamless and options for you on how you deploy your smart contract. And then on top of that, you can come into the front end, and if we go to the Next.js directory and we go to this scaffold config, there's a target network key value or setting. So I could change this to whatever I want. So if I want to switch this to Sepolia, like this, and hit save, and then go to my UI again, it's going to tell me that, well, first of all, it's going to get rid of my burner wallet because we don't have access to the burner wallet anymore. So then we're going to say I have to actually connect to MetaMask. So we have that option. And we can see now that I have my MetaMask connected. I got 10 Sepolia ETH, and now my dApp is hooked to Sepolia, right? So it's that easy. You just, deploy your contract to the testnet using the deployer account, update your UI. Then you can take your application, your front end, and you can do a yarn Vercel YOLO like that. And basically it'll take your thing. And if I did it right now, I would say like, all right, well, you need to authenticate. I already did it earlier. So then it's taking my contact, uploading it to Vercel, and then I have my front end available so that my team can start interacting with it, right? So it's this kind of full seamless solution where you use Scaffold ETH to kind of do everything. So what else can I show you guys? Okay. So one thing I would say too is, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Speedrun Ethereum. So this shameless plug, but Speedrun Ethereum is an awesome way, like after the hackathon, if you kind of want to get more involved in the Ethereum community and the building community, Speedrun Ethereum is this kind of like set of challenges where you can go through and do different like projects and deploy different things. The first one is like an NFT, then you create a staking app, and then you create a token vendor. And then eventually you actually get invited to the Buidl Guild, which the Buidl Guild is kind of this collection of developers or group of developers, community that are all kind of working with Scaffold ETH and helping the community grow forward. And so far there's about 770 builders. There's been 784 builds of Scaffold ETH 1 and Scaffold ETH 2. And then on top of that, we have certain developers that want to be really involved in the community, and you can actually get a stream, and you can actually be funded as a developer to create and use Scaffold ETH, or promote Scaffold ETH, or build on top of Scaffold ETH and help the ecosystem. So that's a really, really cool thing. I also have a POAP, so I would love for you guys to get my POAP after this. Yeah, so I think for right now, I think maybe we can open it up for questions and see if anyone has questions about Scaffold ETH or anything that I showed. Got to be at least one question. Yeah, so we are working on the core developers of Scaffold ETH 2 are working on a kind of a cool like adventure, choose your own adventure style thing where like you might check out the repository and say, oh, I want to actually use Foundry, or I want to use, I don't know, whatever different component, right? So we're looking to do more stuff like that, and that's in the works. So that'll be coming soon. I didn't really actually show as well. There are yarn tests, so we use hard hat. So there's some like yarn tests that you can do. Oh, at least there was. Maybe they got rid of them actually. So maybe that's part of like the plan is we're going to use, Foundry tests or something like that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great question. So the question was about the branch being behind on the main branch. Yeah, that's something probably I need to work on and merge it all up. But I haven't gotten a chance to do it. I didn't actually write that branch. Simone from Edge and Node wrote it, which is super awesome. Yeah, it's okay to use it. It's missing the block explorer. And I can't think of anything else that's really drastically changed. Everything else is very close in commits. It's not that far behind. Yeah. So yeah, the question is, we utilize an older style of deploying Next.js app, create Next.js app. I don't think there's an option that I know of to change that. That would be something that, like, we would look to, the community for people that want to be involved. Maybe that's something you could, be part of the Buidl Guild and help with something like that. But I can't think of anything that you can do right now. Maybe in the future we'll switch everything over. Scaffold ETH is kind of in a really fast prototyping mode right now. There's a lot of developers working on it. So they're doing a lot of feature stuff, but maybe that's something that's coming that I just don't know about. So yeah, fair enough. Yep. Another question? Do people in Buidl Guidl do client projects, like work for clients? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So if there's certain projects that you need help with, we can work with you on that kind of stuff. Just come find me afterwards and I can get you in touch with someone that can help you with that. Yeah. Thank you. I thought I saw another question. Yeah. I love it. Thank you. That's awesome. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, yeah, and it's also worth noting that Speedrun Ethereum right now, all the challenges are actually written with Scaffold ETH 1. So there, you might notice there's some differences if you're going through like what I did. But the good thing is there's like tons of videos online for just Scaffold ETH version 1 that will walk you through that stuff. So awesome. Any other questions? No, thank you guys so much for coming. Appreciate it.